And then, you know, what I'd like to do is just make sure that we're live before I cut the cameras on, and then we just get rolling.
Cool.
Yeah, it's still picking it up.
Like the stream on multiple.
No, it's definitely
services.
a really, really good technology. I think it's ideal. And then, you know, let's just quickly cycle through here. We're live on YouTube.
The stream on multiple.
Yeah, definitely a really, really good technology. I think that's a rookie mistake right there, baby. But you know what? For whatever it's worth, it looks like we're live. I just want to double check we're live on Facebook. Yes, we are. All right, Robert. Cool, man. Welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you for coming down on a Sunday. You know, most people are probably at church or maybe not, but we're having our little
I was going to say watching a game, having a beer, but football season's over. So.
Football season's over, baby. So, hey, man, listen, I think the reason we wanted to get together today and kind of talk is my girlfriend introduced me to you, and she said, hey, Robert is an exceptional young man who has all these brilliant ideas about how the world is and what it could be. And I said, you know, that's the type of people I want to definitely talk to. So lo and behold, it took a couple weeks. I just got back from Vancouver, but hey, we made it happen, and we're here now.
We sure did.
So thank you for being here and making the trek down here.
Yeah, again, thank you.
Pacific Beach, cool, man. So let's get right into it. You know, I'm curious. So what is in your, you know, way of looking at things? What are you seeing we're struggling with as a society, especially millennials?
You know, for millennials, it's a few things, right? There's one, the struggle that we have the expectations of what society says you should do, where you should be, how you should act, what you should have already have achieved, right? At the same time, you also have your own personal goals. And then you kind of try to fall in between the line of it. And I think where a lot of the struggles come in place is it's very hard to meet some of those expectations that we were raised thinking. The American dream, right? The white picket fence, the 2-car garage, the dogs, you know,
right.
That all to happen within your mid-20s is a farce.
It's tough. So I think what you're saying is a lot of people have had this sort of reality picture that they had in their head, and they're getting to their 20s and realizing there's a big mismatch between what they expected things to be like and what things actually are.
And what things actually are, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you were just always told you go to school, go to college. And then basically these things all fall in place.
Yeah.
You know, like everything else just kind of rolls into place.
I think that's a shock. You're absolutely right.
And
it doesn't work out that way always.
And it's funny though, because it was taught to you on multiple levels. It was taught to you by your teachers, it was taught to you by your parents, and then even things that you would see on TV would also portray that image. So all these different sources are hitting you and bombarding you with this
the
dream,
same sort of like stimulus.
Dream,
like
right?
and I think to add to that, Instagram and social media, now they're so filtered out to be about specifically the type of things you're interested in.
Yep.
So it's almost like confirming your own biases every fucking day.
Exactly.
And you're just seeing the same thing that you want to see.
And you know what?
Building your bubble more and more.
And that's such a huge, broad point that I'm glad you brought up, because you probably are going to want to circle back to that at some point, because that's exactly what happens and what is happening with what we see that are another major issue that we're seeing as a country right now, which is just the massive division, right?
Fair enough.
Because you can go and see and have your brand of news, which will always identify with your opinion, your outlook, and on the other spectrum, you
don't even want to. It's like my buddy Josh. He always says, "Here's what research is: Google until you find what supports your claim, and then stop." Because that's what most people do. They will Google and they will only read the article that already supplies evidence to what they believe to be true, and they won't go further than that.
Yes, and that's ridiculous because, and when you're using, I think, Google and the internet like that, then it becomes this divisive weapon, right? So where people are having, I mean, I'm an older millennial, so I'm about as old as you
young millennial.
Yeah, I'm about as old as you could possibly be and be still like a millennial. So 34, actually turned 35.
Hey, awesome.
On Wednesday, actually. So.
Oh wow, happy birthday!
I appreciate it.
Dang, we should go out and celebrate after this. We'll go walk around PB and we'll get some food and whatnot.
We could definitely do that.
Love it.
Yeah. So so it's funny because like we were talking about Jesus Christ, I think I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I think we were talking about confirming biases and
Yeah, but in particular, there was a point in particular that I was going to make, but it's fine. We'll move on.
well, we'll come back to it.
On. We can circle back. But
so current state of things, from what you're seeing is people are finding that their life is not what they expect it to be.
Based off of just many different sources of
conditioning
of media and conditioning.
Yeah.
And like you said, the social media point is huge, right? Because again, you'll just see and identify with your own views, right? So, I remember we were talking about how people can use Google searching kind of like as a divisive weapon, right?
Fair.
Because when I was saying, I remember a time before you couldn't confirm a point with Google instantaneously. So whenever someone would say something that didn't sound factual, you would just kind of have to take their word for it, and just be like,
you weren't able to confirm
you weren't
it so
able to
quick.
confirm it. But nowadays it's super common for someone to be like, oh, well,
fact check.
Well, nope, actually, and it's funny because you can use that also in terms of with opinion based things, right? Versus than things that are actual.
Well, also, like what most people don't understand, and I think you're a little bit more privy to because you work in the tech field, is that a lot of the data on Google is scraped, meaning it's collected by indexing different web pages and doing a resource map of what goes where.
Geography wise as well.
And it's people's opinions, right? So you got to be careful. Are you just reading another person's opinion online? Or are you looking at something that's a little bit more research-based, backed by maybe something more credible? But then again, like the question comes up, well, who defines what's credible? And how do we know that even the sources that we once thought were credible, look at the media, how
are
it's
now
going,
Exactly.
And you can definitely get into that road. But so it's like, how do you define what's convenient and versus what is the truth?
Yeah.
Convenient truth. Convenient becomes the truth, so
exactly,
to speak.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and you're 100% right on that because if I'm just looking for certain things, I think you should actually use your friend's model of what they think Google searching is, but flip it. Maybe search until you find something that is opposite of your opinion or your view. And then maybe that'll challenge your thought because.
So you're saying that's a better strategy to see if what you're thinking is along.
Exactly, because if I'm struggling to find something that's countering my current train of thought or argument, then I would say then maybe I'm in the majority on that train of thought or that particular thing that you're maybe looking up. Because if you can't find really much of a counter argument, it either doesn't exist or it may not be fact based, right?
Right.
So it could be a good strategy of figuring out what's what. Also, just like doing things like that, like if I'm watching a story that broke, let's say on CNN, for instance, I'll go to the polar opposite of it and see how they're reporting it on an opposite end, and then I'll go to maybe BBC and see how they're reporting it in another country.
Gotcha, because we're all going to paint different layers of context that is, for the audience that's going to be viewing that content, and it's kind of strange that even in our country we see such a disparity between networks, and all it is a simple flip of a channel away. Yeah, it's not even a network, different country.
Yeah, so, exactly.
And the internet makes that all much more easier.
Oh yeah, well, and the internet allows these little microcosms of people that can just connect themselves together and find themselves and lump themselves in little.
It's funny,
groups.
my same friend Josh, who sounds like he's a very smart guy now, and he is. He also was telling me we were having a conversation around people will find. Shoot, now I just lost what I was about to say.
It's happening.
Damn, it's happening. Anyway, so I think what I was trying to say was, let it go. You continue. I'm so sorry.
No, I was just saying it's just funny and where I think you were going with it is people have a need and a tendency to become pack rats and pack animals. So it's harder to stand alone, right? And than it is to just naturally pull yourself to different groups that maybe not necessarily even you really identify with, but you feel, everyone seems to kind of be doing that.
The concept of identification is kind of serious. We're living in an identity politics world. And then the whole concept of identity and belief systems is very, something that I've been studying a little bit more recently with Dr. Jordan Peterson. He has a very fascinating book called Maps of Meaning.
Okay.
It's a 35.5-hour audiobook.
Wow.
And it's an equivalent of that, if not more, in lecture. On YouTube, you can find Maps of Meaning. Fascinating. I've just parsed through all of that, and I want to go through it again, maybe like in one more way, but so far it's been fascinating.
Yeah.
By the way, Robert, don't move too far back. That wall is false and it's going to fall.
Oh, gotcha.
The truth about the studio. Right. Anyway, gosh. So the belief system part, right? Like we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast that, we already see the dichotomy of the two different, right and left.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to kind of talk about this for a second. It's interesting if you were to think of belief systems. Let's say there's 2 belief systems or maybe even 3 or more.
Okay.
Well, let's say all of those belief systems are going to have something in common, potentially. You're going to find overlap. So then does that then imply that then there's a third or a fourth potential belief system, depending on... So let's say you have n number of belief systems. So does that mean there's an n plus 1 that like I'm going to refer to as the principal belief system? That's the derivation of all these individual belief systems and what they have in common. Because clearly if we're finding overlap, that means there must be a better way.
Sure.
Right? So that always kind of tricks... most people wouldn't even go to that level of analysis. And identity politics is really you just identifying with, hey, this is the group that they've categorized me in. And, I feel really strongly associated to this group, which puts you in a very resistant place to accept anything new and outside.
Exactly.
And that's not good.
There's a danger in that.
Very dangerous.
Yep.
The whole map that you're operating from is flawed.
Yep.
Potentially.
Yeah. Especially if you're... And we're seeing it now more so than I think we've ever seen. We've definitely moved far from the center in terms of American politics. So everyone that is a Democrat are I'm not going to say everyone. That would be that you can't paint everyone with the same brush. But you can see that there are people that are pushing things that are way more radical thoughts and theories on the left, and same thing on the right. And the problem with it is now everything's become divisive, and there's no centrists. There's no people that are actually looking to reach across the aisle. Like, for instance, what Mitch McConnell's doing is one of the craziest
Who's
things.
that, Mitch McConnell?
Mitch McConnell.
McConnell.
So,
mind if I Google him?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, because I actually don't know that much about these people's names. Mitch McConnell. Let's go to this cat.
Yep. So,
United States Senator.
Yeah, he is the actual
77 years old. Why are all these dudes so old, man? And why is it that you're trying to do this shit so young?
Well, this is the thing. A lot of these guys have gotten to it. They were in this young, and they're just establishment government and figureheads like that have been 20, 30 years in Congress or senators.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother thing. Like maybe we should look at term limits for
fair enough.
For those things. But this guy in particular, he serves as the head of the Senate. So before you can even do or place a bill on the Senate floor, what he's done, which changed everything, is, and in particular was with the negotiations with the wall, right?
Okay, this is about building the wall.
Yeah, this was
border.
In particular, this is where it became really, really, really divisive, where he wasn't even willing to put a bill or proposal in front of the Senate floor unless if he thought the president was going to sign off on it. Well, that's not how that works. You're supposed to present it on the floor and allow the senators to vote yay or nay. It either goes through, and then the president has the ability to sign it or not sign it or veto, right? That's how it works. He's pre-screening and saying, doesn't look like he'd sign it, I'm not even going to present it. That completely changes government.
Yeah.
And it's one little small flick of the switch that there really doesn't have any laws or oversight on because it's never really been done, so it's kind of a gray area. So now everyone's kind of like, what do we do? So there's things like that have become, instead of thinking about how to bridge gaps and make it so that all Americans benefit off of what we want to do, they're doing more research, and it's brilliant. It's a brilliant move. They're doing more research on how to bypass and manipulate each other than actually bridging. So,
can I ask a different question? Just out of curiosity, I'd like to know why or what maybe compels you potentially to want to, look, I can obviously sense that you're in many ways like myself. You want to help people.
Sure. And
you want to, do your part in the community. And, like I'm doing, my whole thing is to blossom people's lives. That's kind of like my tagline with it, but it's essentially the root is like, I want to help people just like a flower. You got to water it and, put it in the right place to get sunlight and give you some way so you can blossom into your full potential. And that's all I want to do is help people do that. So that's kind of my motivation, and I can get into the backstory, but I'd really be more interested in what has, driven you to a point in your life where, you even want to come and talk to me about this, or maybe talk to other people. What was maybe happening with you before that drove you to this?
Well, that's a great question. With
A very loaded one too.
right.
So answer it. Obviously, I don't expect like a sentence you had already planned to answer.
No,
that
of
with.
course, and that's fine. We can unwind that.
Yeah.
I guess there was a lot of things that contributed, and it starts like at a
Does being
young
black
age.
have anything to do with it?
Absolutely.
Cool. Let's start with that.
So, at a young age, well, I'm from Lexington, South Carolina, so
Ooh.
real small place back east. It's a little.
I've only passed through North Carolina, I think,
Okay.
at the airport.
Yeah.
That's all I know about that area.
Yeah, and it's a gorgeous place, and lots of history and things of that nature. But I lived there for maybe a year or so at a time.
Yeah.
And the first time that I was of age and could remember anything, I was 7 years old, just moved from Hawaii, and the first thing this kid said to me when I sat down, and I'd gone to school and stuff in Hawaii, and like there was absolutely like not really much racism that I really experienced in Hawaii, and so it was really new to me. So first thing that the first kid said to me was, he asked me do I know what the N-word is? And that was the very first thing that.
Was he a white kid?
Yeah. Very first
Was
thing.
he asking as in like a kid curiosity, or was he being
Oh,
like
no.
derogatory in it?
Oh, no. He absolutely.
Oh, wow.
And this is at a young age. He
Yeah.
absolutely knew what he was saying and doing. It's just all indication that the kid probably was growing up in a household that was teaching him that.
Yeah, sure.
There are still places there in the South that have Confederate flags hanging everywhere. And then that's a subject of discussion that turns into a real divisive subject about the history of the Confederate flag. But
Pull this up for you, will you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
but where that when that flag is being hung over the state capitol, and in the 2000s, you're like, that's kind of over the state flag and the United States flag. It's kind of like, okay, are you celebrating your history? Or are you making a statement? There are certain businesses that were known not.
It's tribalism in a way.
Yeah,
Right.
certain businesses that are known not to want to serve black people. So there's in a way that kind of shaped me at a young age.
What did you feel at a young age? Did you feel pissed, or did you feel like just what the hell's going on?
It wasn't necessarily pissed. I don't think it all came into play.
It's too much.
Yeah, well, because there's a real I think if you were to ask other black kids, there's a real interesting period in your life when you're probably about 5, I would say, to maybe 10, where you see the movie Roots, and it is kind of like a weird spiritual awakening seeing that movie, because you hear of.
I'm actually not familiar with the movie.
Yeah,
No, I want to Google it real quick.
they did a modern take on it, and the modern take on it was pretty good, but the original Roots was.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, the original Roots was pretty rough to watch, and it's the first time you.
This isn't it.
No, that's not Roots. That's the one. That's the newer version.
Oh, on history.
Yeah, that's the newer version of it. But if you
Gotcha.
that's
What's
the
the story in a nutshell?
The story in a nutshell is the guy that you see there, LeVar Burton, with the chain around his neck.
Was that Denzel on the left?
No, actually, I can't think of who played that role.
From the side, kind of looks like him.
But he was basically born in Africa. He was a teenager running around just in Africa doing his thing, and then basically on the coast they noticed that there were ships coming in. Those ships ended up being slave ships. He was taken to slavery. He tried to escape. They cut off his leg.
Wow.
It just showed the probably most accurate depiction of slavery that we've seen on film up until that point.
Wow.
Right. And so to see it at a young age as a child, I just remember, and every black kid that I've ever talked to asked the exact same question: why did they hate us so much? And it is a rough thing to realize and watch that movie, and for your parents to have to unwind that and explain, this is how it was then, and and it was a very weird part of history, very weird part of your history. And then growing up, and then at the same time, you're seeing movies like Malcolm X, and then they're redoing movies like, and then you go to school and you don't learn that education. It's very, you get a very, very finite.
So you're saying in a way the movie is like teaching you some things about political culture and about the history of your people and the climate that they've been, accustomed. And so that's interesting. So this became as somewhat like of a fable for Black people.
It's not even a fable. I think it gave a lot of people an opportunity to open their eyes and look deeper into our past and what actually was happening.
Question what actually happened.
Yeah, because this is the thing.
Because what story are you being told?
Exactly.
Right? Stories written by the victors.
Exactly.
Right.
So and we're very unique. The African American story is a very unique one because it doesn't have a very, very long history. So I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were like, why are you doing the Ancestry.com thing, the DNA test? He's like, I don't get why people are so interested in that. I can trace my family's history back to the 1400s. And I'm like, that's really cool. And I'm like, that's amazing that you can do that. I was like, may I ask where your family came from and this, that, and the other? And, English family and, Irish family. And it's very easy to trace your roots back then. But when you were taken from one country into another continent and then you became property and then you were given a different name, well, it's very hard to maintain and keep.
You're right. Your identity is changed completely, like who you thought you were.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you've been transplanted to a different. I mean, that whole story, I think people overlook it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm being Indian. I know a little bit about the British past of how they, destroyed our country. But also, a lot of people in India are of the belief that if the British didn't come to our country, we wouldn't be as far developed as we have been because they brought order, a lot of it, to the chaos that was there. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. At least in that case. But, but please.
Yeah. No. I mean. And that's an interesting fact that I think that countries that have been colonized, so the entire continent of Africa has been essentially colonized and sucked for resources. And when it wasn't convenient anymore, the people that occupied left. Like talking about like Belgium, what they did to the Congo is still not talked about, and arguably the largest genocide in the world, where over 13 million people were killed. And this is by King Leopold, right? Yeah. So, and it's like, no one knows or talks about that. So what I was getting at with the roots is the fact that it kind of opened your eyes and it allows you to kind of step back and say, okay, well, in American history, I was only really taught about the Civil War, but never really taught much about.
I didn't mute my phone, Robert. I'm as the host, the idiot here.
No worries, boss. So like, it gives you the opportunity to kind of take that step back and then start really, really looking into and investigating and learning, and learning a lot more. And you couldn't put the earnest on the education system to do it because it just wasn't built into the curriculum. So
I was just going to say, to add to that point, like how much of it that we don't even know about the Russian literature and history of what went on, when they tried to for lack of a better term, they tried to replace the transcendent. That's how Jordan Peterson puts it, which is like they're trying to replace something bigger by like authoritarian rule or, by Stalin and Lenin, and then Trotsky was there. There's a really good show about that, by the way. I'll talk to you about that later. It's just kind of like we don't even know so much about the Russian part of what that experiment was. I mean, that was crazy. Yeah. And look at what's happened there and, how kind of things are going. And it's like, well, guys, history's there to tell you stuff. And if you aren't paying attention, you're letting in. On? It's like, you're letting in the chaos into the world. It's like it's the blissful ignorance and the lack of going past what's being presented to you. And that's part of like my mission is like I want to help people be more aware. Just on a separate topic, but it's really question even your own mind and question your own idea that you think you have of yourself and where did that come from? Who propagated that to you? How did it come to be? How much of it is your own doing versus how much of it is, and then the mind is a fascinating thing. That's why I love psychology. Is like we're talking about, how your beliefs got formed about the world because of your early experiences in life, and that's how all of ours are. Because we, we're just going through. We have this mind, and it's registering all these things. It doesn't necessarily have some sort of meaning to it, and then we attach different meaning from what we assess from different people we talk to about it or learn from, like the movie, or for example, like, oh, this could mean that. And, stories are there to tell you that the affective behavior, like mythology, even the Bible, and like the story of the Buddha or whatever have you, like all of these stories are there to try to teach you to understand that there's something deeper to the words and to the story. Even like look at it, even some Disney movies, they have the same sort of underlying.
And it's interesting how like you bring up a good point. There's more similarities in most like religions or folklore than there aren't.
There's more similarities than differences.
So it's interesting that that it gets broken up into factions, right? It's
funny. It's like part of it is like the people, right? Like, okay, look, Jordan Peterson, again, I want to reference him quite a bit, but because he's been a really good teacher for me in psychology. It's that you're referencing, what are we identifying with again? There's similarities, but we're saying that there's all these objective ways of slicing and dicing that we know, like even with the power of Google and like with the advances in science and having the scientific method of analysis. Yeah. That's all great. Yep. But that doesn't teach you how to be. Yeah. It doesn't teach you how to be and behave in the world and how to act, so to speak. And it doesn't help you by, it doesn't give you any other context besides that. So like, you have to know that these stories have come around for thousands and thousands of years. They've been there for a reason. And what people are, completely ignoring and overlooking because of their blissful ignorance is that there is a reason.
I really like that term, blissful ignorance.
It is. It is, because the less you know, the better off you are. I mean, that's the whole story of Adam and Eve in the garden. That's this whole story of Buddha is he was in this closed encounter in this, you're in this beautiful paradisical state, and all of a sudden chaos will sneak in because what you're inevitably avoiding bringing into light is the thing that's going to be your downfall. Yeah. I mean, Star Wars, like that little fucking hole that destroys the whole thing, right?
Exactly,
like
right.
That one thing that you're overlooking is going to be
is the downfall.
The downfall. And that's true for any society. It's like, it's funny, like the story of the flood, right? Like I as a kid, and a lot of these are fables in a way because they're designed to teach you a lesson, and you're that's how we passed information down, is through stories. Exactly, right. Because we weren't always writing books, and we weren't always that literate either.
Exactly. So we always had that storyteller, that tribal person that would keep the history alive.
And it almost just seems that the political state now is that we're playing to the lowest common denominator in people. We're playing to the malevolent. We're playing to the devious side that's inside of us, the knee-jerk reactions that we so have, the road rage reactions, and I see it. It's fucking all over social media. It's all over everywhere. And the thing is, it's the instantaneous, and we're wrapping in so many concepts in this conversation, but it's instantaneous, what the information we're getting, and it's hard to know that if what you're getting is factual, again, going back to that earlier point, and if it's not factual, then, well, are you going to take the time to look it up, or are you just going to register that in your memory? Because that's what most people do, and that's identity politics. You're going to say,
that's 100%
oh
true.
My God, I just read that on social media and I didn't bother looking it up. And so now if any word of that, any hint of that comes up, all you're going to do is just recall it the way you saw it. Yep. And now you're on the bandwagon because you're in the know of the common.
And you know what's so dangerous about that? And I saw it, on during the election, at the 2016, right? I was on, I have many different friends from all over the place, right? So,
which is great.
Yeah.
It's good to see different perspectives and things.
You absolutely have to.
Yes.
And
that's part of what this studio is supposed to be, is to give you different perspectives on life.
Dude, I quick little sidebar.
Please.
I was in
we're not in any rush, by the way. This isn't like a timed podcast. So this is, we go for as long as you want. Cool. Man.
So I was actually your girlfriend's friend Abby. We were in Las Vegas, and we just happened to be talking about something, and we ran into like 4 South African people. Yeah. And then next thing you know, we spent like 2 hours having a conversation with these young South Africans because I wanted to gain their perspective on a couple of different things. And I ended up having one of the coolest conversations I had in a long time because, he was interested in my perspective on things and I was interested in his perspective. And it was all about what was going on with our election. You have this group of South Africans that had a very, very viable input as to the American political climate. And I was like, this is interesting. We need to talk. We just seriously sat there, had drinks, and freaking just wrapped it up. But I thought that was really, I thought that's a little interesting.
The way I've had many of those experiences where I've spontaneously like broken out into conversation with somebody I had no intentions of going that deep with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I've always kind of studied when that behavior, I've studied it in the past, and I said, okay, well, what was that in retrospect? You know? Because it's happened so many times and I almost feel like it's out of my control. Okay. It almost feels like something is pulling me to talk to this person, and the words are formulating themselves, and it's almost like I'm speaking, but it's not necessarily for me, but I'm speaking to help them.
Yeah.
And we feel so freaking connected, and it's like it's a whole different level of intimacy because you're no longer just talking about the surface and you're no longer repeating what you have just absorbed from the outside. You're actually having a real moment, a present moment with somebody, and there's nothing more real than that.
There's not much of that. Yeah. Not much of that left too, because and you made a great point. A lot of it is just regurgitated what they see or what they hear. It's not even their thought.
It's shit in and shit out.
Yeah,
you know, it's a data problem.
Yep.
You know,
and
putting shit didn't put in.
Yep. This is a bad data in, bad data out.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
So it's so I was seeing it with the 2016 election where I had this one friend. He posted this picture of Hillary Clinton shaking hands with like Osama bin Laden or something like that, and I was like,
"The fuck!"
I was like, "Dude, that's
real."
I was like, "That's clearly." I was like, "Come on, dude."
Oh my god!
I was like, "It's clearly like
See, that's what scares
fake, right?
me. It's like, aren't we gonna fucking break out into wars because of this?
But this is the thing. So I see this, and it's like now has like 25 likes. And then there's other people saying, okay, you know this is fake, right? And he's like, yeah, but I find this funny. Well, then I look over the side and I see 5 shares. My curiosity I want to see what other people are. What those.
Well, here's the thing. And the funny thing is, you're like, just to add to that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
You have 1,000 people on Facebook roughly, and then if you have shared that with somebody else, and now they've shared it to another 1,000 groups, that's 1 million people, and a third shares 1 billion people.
Quickly.
So how is the exponent, like it's an exponential growth. It's not linear at all. So it's like the way you're going about this, that's how things go viral.
Exactly.
And it's funny because like watching it from a distance, you look at a piece of content that goes viral. You can really assess psychologically what part of the human mind collectively is it targeting. Yeah. Because you can clearly see like a beautiful, poetic something versus like, okay, somebody falling, like, okay, I get it. Like we're all clumsy. Yeah. We could relate to that. Like, as long as somebody's not seriously like hurt. But then there's also like so much of this like fake content that's just there designed to provoke these behaviors in you. And you're just like,
a lot of it's fear.
This seems doctored.
A lot of it's fear mongering.
Oh yeah.
So that particular post, when I looked at where it was shared, I'm like, well, my God, these people are sharing it and saying, this is why I'm not voting for her. And then I'm like, people are taking this as real.
Yeah.
So I was like, so you should probably remove this post or tell them that it's a joke, right? And he's like, oh no, it's just funny. And I'm like, but this is the problem. It's
they don't
not
see
just
the implications.
Funny. It's dangerous. That's very
Fair
dangerous.
Enough.
So and now it's like we're getting to the time of the year where we're getting close to an election period, and I'm like, okay, I got to not even look at my Facebook right now because all it is just BS from both sides, and I don't necessarily want to see it. And that's where like I was having a conversation with someone where he said, when our forefathers were talking about the Constitution and said the freedom of speech, I'm pretty sure they weren't thinking if Facebook was going to exist or Twitter, So, and I'm pretty sure that if they thought a Twitter was going to exist, I'm damn sure they didn't think the president would use it as the official communication of the country. So I'm kind of,
in a way, you're bypassing a lot of these things that would be advising you to not, because the thing is, right? I think the concept you're covering here, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying is you're free to do what you want, but you're not free of the consequences that you get from your actions.
Absolutely.
Like just because you made a post, you're more than free to do that.
Yep.
But you don't necessarily understand the repercussions of how that's influencing other people. And honestly, I've tried to make a shift in myself in the last like year or so, and more going forward is that like I really only want to tell you stuff or show you content that either makes you feel good or, if not anything, makes you introspect. Like I'm not trying to make you happy.
Sure.
I'm certainly not here to make you sad though. I'm definitely not here to make anybody be upset. And I want somebody, if they get upset by something I say, to come and talk to me about it.
Sure.
Like let's get into a real conversation about what made you upset about what I said, rather than you just, holding all that on to you.
Yeah.
That's what I like really am trying to focus myself on.
And it's also and that's a great great place to basically a great place to be in terms of a mindset and how you want to project and show yourself in social media, because I find that I don't post much at all.
See, that's the other problem. Like, people will then go to the other extreme of not doing it at all. But then, I mean, how do you feel about that?
Okay, so when I do post, it's something that I'm usually really either passionate about. It's like pictures of like family or an event or something that I went to. I try to, and the reason I think I've kind of gone to that extreme is because I've always asked myself, what am I trying to accomplish by a post? And I think a lot of people should ask themselves, like when they post something that might be, maybe divisive, what were you trying to accomplish? Were you trying to educate
What's
people?
the intention?
Yeah. Were you just being cruel? Were you like, what was your intention? And like, what
it's
were
just so damn easy to hit the share button, man, without thinking about it, right?
It is.
Or like just rant something out. It's just the accessibility of how quickly you have it.
But do you know what I'm willing to bet is what the end intention was? And it's sad. They just wanted the likes.
Oh yeah.
And that's painful.
That's replacing this.
That's painful for me to think of, because it's that replacing of, again, what we go back to. You want people to agree and accept. And now you're part of that community.
Now you're getting me riled up about the Instagram thoughts. I'm so serious. Like, Mimi and I were talking about this last night when we were on our way out, and she was like, I think you're being too much. But I'm like, no, I think I have a point though. And the point was, like, I see certain, so I'm doing my part of obviously trying to grow the studio, and I was telling you, like, we're trying to do a retreat. So we're gonna have a retreat in March where we want to get people come out in San Diego and do this awareness sort of retreat where we'll have like a 2-day session. We'll have you come and learn how to properly learn about who you are and not who your brain and society has projected on to you to be. And I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm simply going to point that out to you.
Sure.
But on a side note, it's like I'm trying to find out through social media, because obviously I know the game I'm playing, and I get that I need to go through the influencers to get them, give my channel some views.
100%.
So then that means I'm going through Instagram and I'm looking for people in San Diego that have high number of views, and I shit you not, dude, I see, and I'm pointing out the girls, and this I have good reason, and anybody wants to come and refute this on me, come at me, bro. Like I was a bodybuilder, so I fucking understand the physique part and like the aesthetics and the beauty of a physique, and I'm not discounting any of that, and I'm not body shaming anybody. So like I would see these girls and their entire page is just tits and ass and just pictures that are purely provocative, and I've noticed a few different things of pattern that I'm just observing and pointing out, which is they don't have a steadied relationship themselves. All their pictures are very much like no real commentary, and then I notice glimpses of their posts are like they're seeking something, like they'll have some like spiritual posts every once in a while, like in their story. So it's like I get that there's a part of you, I can totally see, like I'm being as analytical and like objective about it as I can be, and I'm seeing that there's a part of you that really wants that attention. But you're seeking for the wrong attention. And I see that there's a part of you that's seeking for something obviously bigger than yourself to serve. And so far you've just found that there's this algorithm that serves your
just maybe going
initial
about that wrong
hit
way,
needs.
Right?
So like that's kind of, and I've seen that as a pattern, man.
It's just serving the surface needs, right? It's not really getting down to the depth and the real awakening part of it. And I think that's still hard, because I couldn't say that I know what I'm passionate about, and I know what I love, and I know ultimately what I will accomplish and where I want to go. There's still certain things that I'm really passionate about wanting to travel. Really passionate about just many different things that I haven't been able to really dive or.
Well, that means you need to start documenting all of those things on social media.
True.
Because that's a good way to go about it. That's what Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, he's really popular. I don't know if you know about him. He has a very big like marketing agency in New York, but he started as like a liquor store salesman for his dad, and real Russian immigrant grit. Like the dude is pure, all about self-awareness, same kind of shit that I'm talking about. Long before I even knew about Gary Vee. So I was really gravitated to him. He just has a very good strategy for social media marketing. I'm trying to deploy it, and I can do more, obviously, but everything happens in due time. So it's like Keep working at it. The whole thing is his like document your truth. Don't try to create bullshit.
Yeah.
Don't try to like serve this false like perception that you have created on social media that you have this beautiful life when you don't.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's so much of that. And I think that also plays to kind of circle all the way back and pull it all back with the where it kind of struggles where millennials are falling into places. That's one of those triggers that I think people that hurts us. We go online and we look at it and we see like a friend maybe from high school or from college or something, and it's like every single picture that's like it looks like they're just having the best of times ever, right? Like there's no worries, no struggles, nothing. It's like, man, they seem to always go out to eat. They're wearing the nicest clothes. They're driving this really nice car, blah, blah, blah. And you don't really know really the story behind it. They actually could still be doing all of that, right?
Sure.
And still may be the most miserable person in the world. There was there was a saying that I saw, I think the other day. It went something. It was kind of like it's really sad. They're so rich, all they have is money.
That's deep.
Right?
That's deep.
I was like, that's kind of cool.
Let's break that apart.
Yeah.
Say it again.
So it said they're so rich, but all they have is money, right?
Yeah, because what happens when your money runs out?
Yeah.
Are you poor?
Yeah.
I mean, in technical, objective, material sense, you are, but
it's not everything.
It's not even about that. Exactly. It's not all about money.
I know plenty of wealthy people that are some of the saddest people.
Yeah, don't we all? Yeah. Well, I was one of them, actually. Believe it or not, I was a 24-year-old, 25-year-old making six figures.
Yeah.
And living, bought myself Rolexes, bought myself nice shit. You know, what could I wanted I could get, and I just realized I was fucking miserable. Why? Because my fundamental beliefs were all shaken up. Like what I thought what I wanted wasn't true. Like the same thing what we started the conversation with, where I thought I would be in my life at that age, I was not. Yeah. Because I thought I would be the happiest person with everything going for me. I just, was a bodybuilding champion, came off of a win, looked really well. But you know what? Things started to just fucking fall apart. And then you started looking for work. You realize as soon as you graduate college, you're like, wow, finding a job is really not that easy. Yeah. It's complete bullshit. I've been just sold a bullshit, and my parents have just paid a whole bunch of fucking money to put me through this or whatever. And if you're fortunate enough to have parents that have had money to do that or whatever, like your case is, if you have to loan the money out and now you're in debt, you're realizing that that's not the truth. And you're, pursuing a career that maybe if you were misled into, you thought this was the real thing, and you're like, holy crap, this is, and you know what? I'm very thankful that I am in the tech field, but at the same time, I couldn't get a job right out of college. Nope. So I realized, okay, what does that mean? I just completed a major that everybody's touting to be computer science, to be like the cusp, the best. It's like, 'cause we have the fucking need. And you know what they told you? You need experience.
Yeah. What was how many years experience do you have? Or you can't even apply because it's,
they just disqualify you based off of 5 years experience. Like, what? I just graduated college. What do you mean I need 5 years of experience?
And now I'm getting the calls and now if you had to take out loans, I'm now getting calls from the student loan places
to pay back.
Hey, so what can we do to start paying that back and get you settled there? Yeah. And it's funny though, because it's I'm a fan of Saturday Night Live. Like right now, they're kind of they're on a good little run because their materials are being written for them. I mean, all you have to do really is just watch whatever's going on in the White House. It's pretty funny. So
it used to be a really good show that I used to love watching, but I haven't recently.
It's you would enjoy. I think they could actually just make that show just the weekend update, which is with Michael Shea and Colin Jost. Those guys are phenomenal.
That's always been a good segment.
Yeah, but they did this little bit that was talking about the baby boomers. It was like a game show where millennials got to pay or play for different game show prizes. So it was like, I think it was like $150,000 to go towards student loans, a house, new car, and then they had like the baby boomer starter package, which was like $250,000 in the bank.
The starter package.
Yeah, a house, new car, whole 9 yards, right?
I like that.
And it was just it's funny because when I actually have baby boomer parents, but it's funny when you talk to them, they're like, well, I put my way through college. I'm like, yeah, college was like $5 when you went to school. I'm like, it was like, well, I had this brand new Pontiac Trans Am. I'm like, yeah, I just looked up the price on it. It was $4,500. That's a down payment for my car now. I was like, internet and Wi-Fi, all the technology we had to have.
I don't know. Perhaps inflation has something to do with it, but also the
Huge
cost
inflation.
of living.
Cost of living
is insanely different now.
And wages haven't changed.
Exactly. That's the key. The inflation argument goes to shit when you say that the wages aren't necessarily increasing and the price still is.
Yeah. I mean, and especially you living in California, in Southern California.
The rent is insane. I was living in the Bay Area, and that's a fucking mess.
Yep.
I had actually one of my last guests on here, Bundu. He was on trying to. He moved from Florida, so he was trying to actually find a way to have affordable homes for people that are working in support staffs.
That's really cool.
In like corporations in the Bay Area, because we have all these tech companies there.
Yeah.
But then think about it: the tech people that work in these companies are making 6 figures or more, right? Minimum, like an engineer salary in the Bay Area is 100K or more.
Yeah.
My first job, I was making $115,000.
Yeah, if you're a DBA, you're starting at 130.
So but that all sounds great on paper until you get up there and you realize, oh shit, it's gonna cost me like $3,000 to rent a place in the city.
Yep.
So I definitely can't live in San Francisco.
So I gotta live outskirt.
Gotta live in the outskirt, which means I'm gonna have to commute, which means that and BART is not cheap.
Nope.
It used to cost me $10 a day to go to and from work. That adds up real quick.
Real fast.
Real quick. And it's just like all these things you'd find. So the point is, right, like he's trying to figure out a solution where they can make some sort of affordable homes that if corporations, because they are really at the heart of this, like they're running the businesses there, they're making the money, and they're the reason everybody's there.
Yeah.
So it's like they need to come up and work with his foundation potentially or others.
Sure.
And come up with a joint solution where we can have affordable homes for people that are supporting all these people.
Exactly.
So like the engineers that are coming in, well, what about the people that are making the food for them, the janitorial staff, the people maintaining them, everything around and facilitating
guys,
everything. Yeah. Who's taking care of them?
Yeah.
And why are they having to drive 3-4 hours outside? Because commute is horrible.
Probably working like Uber or
or
Lyft on the side, and like that's
just making ends meet.
That's viable. That's really, really viable. That's actually a great idea.
Yeah. I think you would link up with him. It'd be fun.
I mean, but if you think about it, it's like that would be a great idea. I mean, anyone could benefit off of that. You have like the Google complex there, the Apple complex there.
But those are built for people that are the engineers.
Yes.
He's thinking about the support staff.
Exactly. And that's what I'm thinking too. So it's like, having, like affordable housing and there's plenty of area in Palo Alto to develop.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, the development part, like he's got the logistics and the numbers all crunched out,
That's
like
huge.
to the point where they're like saying, there's all these strip malls that are going to shit because of the online retail. So they're going out of business. Well, guess what? We'll buy one of those, zone it out, build a 100-unit community, have like park in there, like everything you can do. It's all feasible. It's just a matter of, do you want to help the people that work for you, or do you want to just make money and fuck everyone else?
True.
I mean,
that's huge.
That's massive.
I love that. I love
massive.
that. Yeah.
Massive.
I love that.
That's why I was very shaken and moved by what he was doing. And when we met, I kind of was like, wow, this guy's really passionate about trying to help other people. Because, that's where that's the part. If you actually really know yourself and figure out every self-awareness, if you get to the end of any of the meditation, anything, you do anything religiously, you're going to find that you want nothing more once you realize the truth about being. You want nothing more than to help somebody else figure it out.
Well, and Obama said something really good. He was saying that he was trying to find himself, but while he was trying to find himself in school, he was actually very selfish. And he realized that the only way and the most successful way he could be successful was when he started helping others.
Yes.
And that's when he became the Obama that Yes. He stopped trying to do whatever he could to help himself, but he started influencing and helping others. Yeah. And that's when everything changed for him. Yeah. And I thought that was super profound, that it's...
You need solitude to introspect. Mm-hmm. The whole concept of meditation is somehow skewed because of the word being overloaded. Mm-hmm. But really, if you take the time to sit still, you're going to notice things about yourself. Solitude is a really good teacher. Yeah. If you're just constantly keeping yourself in a loop of busy phone notification, social media, everything's like just running 1,000 miles a minute in your in your head, you will never know who you really are because you've never taken the time. But you know what? You can clearly see that that's the epidemic that we're living in. That's the world, the problem that we're trying to solve with the politics. And I'm so happy that you're, someone that's smart, that wants to do and help and sees the real state. Sometimes it's like you see that all these older folks, I'm not discounting anybody. I know I have a lot of older friends in their 70s too. So it's like, I love them. And there is, something about them that's unique, which is that they haven't stopped learning and they haven't stopped evolving their viewpoints. It's when you just think you know everything and you become sort of like, this is the way to do it and this is what I believe and nothing more.
And this is all we're going to do.
Yeah, that's not the way the world works.
No.
It's constantly shifting.
Cannot be an immovable barrier. You cannot just be so thick in your ways and not possibly see. And that's something that's huge with me, and that's why I like having conversations with people that have opposite opinions, because oftentimes they'll educate me. And if they have a viewpoint or they know something that I don't and it is fact, I'll actually thank them for it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, that's huge. I never really thought of it. And sometimes those thoughts change my perspective and my viewpoint on things.
Yeah.
I think in order to be an effective politician, I think you should always be open to at least that theory of change and different perspective.
Even science promotes it. Scientific research, you have to have a peer review.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody else who is also smart look at your shit and say, am I making any mistakes here? Yeah. If so, please let me know.
Exactly.
And you got to do that. You have to do that with your own thoughts. I would say it really starts with yourself.
Yep.
It really does, because you cannot change anybody else unless you know that you can change yourself first.
Do you know it was an interesting concept in government that was way back in the day that was lost? So, and this is probably lost in like the 1800s. The person that was running for president, they oftentimes didn't have a running mate. What would happen was the person that lost would become their VP.
So they're kind of working in tandem.
Can you imagine that theory?
I think that's a very good theory. I think it's just that we're at a place right now where the other side doesn't even want to fucking look at each other.
Wouldn't work.
You know?
It just wouldn't work.
But yeah, no, for sure. I think that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Actually, something similar like that happened to me in my life. It was really interesting. So when I was trying to be a drum captain, I was a drummer. I had been a drum captain at the drum line as a junior in high school. And then all of a sudden, senior year is coming around. Well, I've been the drum captain, so I'm sort of expecting that I'm still going to be the drum captain as a senior. But also a really good friend of mine and also on the drum line, Corey, he is also like, just as good and capable and if not more than myself to be a leader. And then who the fuck am I to say that you can't be the captain, right? So actually the leadership, the music instructors, the teachers, what they decided, they made us co-captains.
Okay.
And that worked out better than anybody could have expected. Our drumline became exceptionally better because he had strengths that I lacked. Like he had played things that I hadn't, and he knows, he has his own way of doing things and I have my own way. And we were really kind of able to do that together. It was the best year we had.
Creates pure collaboration.
Yeah, and it definitely, like, there was sometimes, you would think that there was like untalked about animosity potentially, but then because we were kids, we're fucking teenagers, right? Like, so clearly there's like hormones and all this like, ego going around. But you know what? It actually was, in retrospect, it was really awesome.
I think what made it well is that you guys both probably had a clear vision of what you guys wanted to do.
We both wanted to have a good drum line. Yeah, that's it.
And it's okay to be competitive, right?
Yes.
And in fact, competitiveness is huge. That's another issue with millennials that I have, being one as well, that we can sidebar and talk about. But that competitiveness and having that drive, and then both of you guys having a common goal, as long as you have the common goal and that same common goal is good. All you can do is push each other to greatness. And I have it's my mom was telling me about. I just recently ran into a friend on Facebook that we lived in like the same apartment complex, and we're both really into basketball. We were like 6, 7, 8, up into our teenage years. Then he moved to Florida. I was almost confident that BJ was going to be a professional basketball player, right? Yeah. Because I was good, but BJ was freaking phenomenal, right?
Yeah. And I've had so many of those people that I met through drumming. I was like, damn, I think I'm good, but this guy's fucking great. Like, he's the shit.
Right. And the thing is like, my mom was like, you'd be like 9, 10 years old. You'd come home like crying because you're like, PJ did this move and I can't do it. But you know what the crazy thing of that is I would go out there, and when he wasn't around, practice the hell out of that move until I figured it out. Right.
That's it. Work harder.
And not only that, when to hear from him like 20 years later that he's like, bro, you were so good. I thought you were so much better than me. And then I would go home and be like crying to my parents about how you had like such a better shot than me. And I'm like, dude,
pushing each other.
If we would have grown up together with that exact same type of drive, we didn't know it, but we were subconsciously just pushing each other.
Shout out to Greg Eagle in high school, and shout out to Peter Kell. Both of those guys And a couple other people, definitely, like they just pushed me on my game of drumming, man.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh shit, he can do that. I want to learn how to do that.
Exactly,
And it's
right?
like exactly what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
It just pushes you, and you can't really. And actually, that is the truth for motivation, right? Like if you look at people that are doing better than you in life, and they have something you don't, and so rather than thinking of that as like, oh shit, they have something I don't have, that means like I can't or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
no, that means you can. That means it's possible.
That means it's possible to
Yeah,
do that.
it's possible.
Right? I think our mindsets have changed, and I also think that's a little bit of it's a little bit of the participation award kind of thought and theory.
Yeah.
Versus,
Everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah. Versus where now I think some people's
I
mindset.
never really got a trophy. That was the problem with me. I never really won shit. Like and then until like much later,
Yeah.
bodybuilding was like the pinnacle of my like winning something, and then that was it. Like drumming was becoming the drumline leader, but that was more a leadership thing, not more like trying to win anything. It was just something I wanted always, like to help other people be better.
To be that leadership role, right?
Yeah.
It was for me. It was my parents. My mom was a basketball superstar. My stepdad basketball superstar,
Wow.
and so sports was always kind of integral in my life,
awesome.
right? So I have a
And then
bunch-
you also
bunch
did
of trophies
jiu-jitsu. I want to hear
Yeah.
about that a little bit, but
Oh
please.
yeah. So but it was kind of funny to me that now, whereas if there's someone like you use the example of like someone's like a movie star or something, right? Whereas you and I kind of seem like we have the mindset would be like, oh, that's possible, that's obtainable.
Yeah.
Let me work hard to get there. I truly believe there's a mindset shift now that has turned to, well, let me look at what they had as advantages that I don't have, so I can make excuses as to why I will never be there. So
Very good point.
So instead of
What advantages did they have that I didn't have?
yeah, they're like, oh, well, they grew up in California, so it's easier to get to Hollywood to try out for those parts or roles. Very easy to make excuses as to why you didn't get something than to even attempt it or try. The only way you succeed, right, is failure. So sometimes you just have to get out there and be willing to fail.
And fail more.
And fail and just keep freaking
It's
doing
so funny, man. Like bodybuilding was such a good teacher to me because like, what do you do in the gym? You fail.
Yeah.
You go till you
You
fucking
go
can't
to
do no
failure.
more. So it's like every day you're failing.
Yep.
Like, oh man, that really like even yesterday. I don't I go work out like a couple days a week in the gym now. I try to do more outdoor stuff, but. A buddy of mine, Josh, again, went to the gym because he's in San Diego.
Yeah.
He's a large part of why I like really living around close to him too. And then we went to the gym and like, oh my God, like nowhere near what I would work out, in terms of weights or whatever. But man, I had such a good workout. I felt really good.
Yeah.
And I just failed, right? But like I failed in the right way and I just felt so satified. And then like this morning we were sleeping and like, like when you wake up and you have the
like,
soreness.
ah.
So like I just turned and I was like, oh, it's so tight. I can't lift this. It hurts. And I was just like, oh, satisfaction, baby.
Because you did something, right?
You did something.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're like, that's the power of sacrifice. It's like you fucking do it every single day. Every day. Just do it and then you'll get somewhere. And
what's funny, and jiu-jitsu is very similar to that. So so when we first started doing jiu-jitsu, and it's kind of funny how I got into it.
Well, who's we? Like a couple friends of yours, or just you and
me? It was like me and actually it was a group of us actually, because my friend
group of friends from somewhere.
Yeah, good friends from high school actually.
Gotcha.
My friend Robert Charbonneau was a wrestling champion in high school, and then went to Palomar and was kicking butt there. But I mean, he was winning, in two divisions, like 151s and like 170s or 167s, and was like kind of unheard of. He was a little bit of a freak of nature. So his wrestling skills made it so that he was introduced to a lot of people that were beginning parts of MMA. So he ended up meeting a guy, Eddie Sanchez. So Eddie Sanchez ended up being one of our friends and ended up being a roommate of ours in San Marcos. And at this time period, the only fights that you could get would be like in Mexico at this nightclub called Baby Rock. It was really sketchy. Like legitimately looked like if it's like insert any crazy MMA movie with like horrible acting and like Randy Couture, and it looked like that. Like it's a nightclub and people are making side bets and it's the weirdest, craziest thing you've ever seen. And this is early MMA, right?
Where was this?
This is early 2000s. Like Total Combat was one of the names of the organizations. Some of the better organizations that were around at the time were like Gladiator Challenge, and then you had different fights that were like at different casinos, like Golden
Gotcha.
Acorn and all those places. But all of them were still like kind of lower level.
Was Joe Rogan still the narrator?
Joe Rogan was still a narrator because this is like maybe 2004, 2005, right?
Okay.
So this is actually before when the UFC took off which we call the tough generation. Tough generation meaning the Ultimate Fighter.
Oh, okay. So the best of all.
So when the Ultimate Fighter show came up, everything just went. The UFC just exponentially exploded, right? They were already big.
What was the like the prop? Was it like anybody from any background of any martial arts?
You had to have been a professional fighter. You had to go to an audition. So they had like an audition in Las Vegas to do it. We had a couple of friends that have tried out, and actually I have friends that have gone through the program. But you have to go and audition. You roll. You do some jiu-jitsu. You do some sparring. You do some Muay Thai or whatever your proficiency is in striking. And then they call you back, and then you have to do a fight to enter the house.
Nice.
You win the fight, you're in the house, and then you have the Ultimate Fighter show. So we were doing all this before the tough generation came up. So this is before it was super popular and everybody, had cool,
Best part about everybody that I meet that knows jiu-jitsu is like you would never fucking expect that they can just literally put you to sleep and without you even like doing very much effort like of resistance. It's just like the silent killers, man. Guys just walking around.
In San Diego, there's so many of them.
There's a jiu-jitsu school right there.
There's so
literally
many
right
of
there,
them
man.
in San Diego.
Yeah.
There are
in my backyard. There's a jiu-jitsu school.
They're legit killers walking. It's
crazy, man.
But so long story short, Eddie ended up getting into the UFC, and he was a heavyweight, and just to live in that house with him, you kind of like had to defend yourself because he was kind of a jackass, but not like in the sense of like where he's like actually trying to hurt you. He would just like you're just walking by and he would like put you in a knee bar, and you're like, "Are you serious, bro?" So we end up going to his jiu-jitsu studio at the time. It was called Team Magnitude, and just ended up falling in love with it and started rolling and just really kind of getting a grasp. And the cool thing about jiu-jitsu, which you kind of alluded to with the bodybuilding, the way you get better is by failure. So what we used to hate about, we would consider people that wore tap out they were more of an MMA guy. They were not a jiu-jitsu guy.
The people that
wore tap out. That
wore tap out.
Yes.
Okay. I thought
so.
Okay.
So they're definitely. We would look at them as okay. They're definitely an MMA fan. They're not a jiu-jitsu guy. They're not a jiu-jitsu purist. And the reason we would say that is because jiu-jitsu to tap out isn't necessarily a bad thing. You tap out all the time. When you're in practice, you tap out a billion freaking times. You're not going to win every single spar or every single grappling match. And in fact, the beauty of jiu-jitsu is when you tap out, you then with your partner that you roll with, you're like, so what was your setup? How did you catch me? And you learn to defend that so that you don't get tapped out again. But actually tapping out isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's an admission of not having that knowledge, not having that knowledge to defend yourself in a training aspect. If you're in a mixed martial arts fight, okay, I get it. You lost the fight because you tapped out, right? But in a purist jiu-jitsu form, no.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's so true.
Yeah.
Because then I guess the tap out thing is more like they're probably targeting towards the.
It was the macho tough. It was the macho tough game.
Guy.
Yeah, it was a tough game
for sure.
So, and that's why, like with jiu-jitsu, it was kind of always
is that brand still around?
Tap out. They're still kind of around. They're around, but we would never wear it because all of our coaches were Brazilian.
Yeah,
and so they kind of felt like they have some Brazilian coaches have like a feeling of you're stealing the art, right? So you would never wear tap out in a Brazilian gym. Just never do that.
So tell me a couple of the things I really want to I'll maybe make this a standalone, but it's like I really want to know a couple of the things that you found out through jiu-jitsu that were like maybe potentially like, for example, for me, bodybuilding, like it taught me the value of discipline, right? That was the key. And not just discipline physically. It's all about mental discipline because the only one you're fighting is the fucking guy in your head that's telling you to stop and that you're in too much pain or that it's too early in the morning to get up, whatever. You're just fighting the voices in your head. And the more you do it, the more you realize that, wow, I really have control over something. And so like that was like one of the big things that I learned from bodybuilding, among other things. But I'm curious, like what were some things that you've been able to then take and then multiply and replicate in other parts of your life? Maybe some lessons if you can recall.
There's plenty of them with jiu-jitsu.
Maybe give like the top three, maybe.
One big one was, for me, was fearlessness.
Fearlessness.
Yeah, you.
In what way?
In so many different ways. It applies to so much. Like, doing things that put you out of your comfort zone. Jiu-jitsu is out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
Doing your first jiu-jitsu tournament, out of my comfort zone. But those were all things that I had the confidence into doing because I had practiced so much or felt confident or capable of doing it. Not only, and it's going to sound really weird, but not only that, but like the fearlessness of just like walking through life in general.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing like if you've ever been you don't want to like always get choked unconscious, obviously, but but it happens, right?
Ooh,
so the first
has that happened to you a lot?
no, not like a lot, but it's happened, you know.
It freaked me the hell out.
No, it's not at all. So like so this is the thing. The first time you get choked out, like you probably fear it a little bit.
Because you think like you're dying, don't you?
And I can't think, and it depends on the choke. It depends on the choke. If it's a windpipe choke, it can take upwards of 45 seconds for you to go out. If it's a carotid artery choke, if it's like carotid artery, you could go out in 3 to 8 seconds. So you probably will just wake up and be like, "What happened? I was in the middle of rolling and now I'm asleep." Like,
what? And how long do you think would you say you would be out for? Is it momentary or is it like minutes?
No, it's momentary.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because your system is interesting, and it literally looks like you're kickstarting a system. Like you literally jerk.
When you come out of a blackout situation, have you noticed any sort of like, the way I say it, like it's like a respawn, right? So it's like, do you notice like any sort of additional energy? Do you notice any sort of weird behavior in your conscious state?
No. So the first time was probably the most profound because we were actually just in practice, and they were teaching a counter to a choke. So I have someone in a full locked guillotine. And what they did is you would kind of like stand up.
Fucking Google this thing, man.
And you would kind of like stand up, and then you would put all of your pressure from your shoulders onto a carotid artery, and then you just wait. So if the person you're fighting has a guillotine and they're not breathing or they're choking you, or
that's not what we want.
Oh wow, you can still buy those.
Yeah, right.
I was like, only in America. No, so. The one down, that one would be a perfect example of a guillotine.
Oh, is that Khabib?
Actually, I don't know. That looks like it might be Brandon Schaub.
Oh man.
Oh no,
that's Khabib, dude. That's got to be him.
I don't know. That could be Joe, or it could be Joe Diesel.
Oh man.
Oh no, that's Minotauro Nogueira.
Okay, well we're completely off. Never mind.
So well, no,
this is the move?
That guy's different. So yeah, that's the guillotine, right? So,
okay, because he's got his head here.
Yes. So I'm the guy that's getting the guillotine choke. So what the counter was.
You're this guy.
No. I was the other
You're
guy.
this
I'm
guy.
that guy. Yeah.
You're doing it.
I'm doing the choke.
Gotcha.
And this is what made it suck because I ended up getting choked unconscious from thinking I'm winning. Right. So the counter on this was the guy stood up. So where he put all of his body pressure on my neck. So he put his arm behind my neck and put his shoulder into my carotid artery. So as I'm still choking and I'm pushing and pushing and pushing,
he put you to sleep.
He put me to sleep. So it was a really cool counter that we then learned and used all the time, right? So
fascinating.
The crazy thing about it, that was the first time I ever went unconscious, right? So all I remember is I have this guy in this choke, and then we're listening to reggae music. Because oftentimes while we're rolling in jiu-jitsu, we're often listening to reggae music.
And smoking weed, I know.
Yeah. So
I know the stories.
So
talk to enough people that do jiu-jitsu.
So
it's fucking awesome.
It helps.
Actually, Jim, and just to clarify, I think if anybody's listening and they don't understand what we're saying, it's like people have used marijuana to considerably change their state of consciousness in a way where they're more recognizing of their state of being and they can feel their body more. And from what I understand and from what I've heard fighters talk about is that when they're rolling around, they are able to feel minor sensations more.
And there's also the creativity aspect of it.
Oh yeah, you're accessing different parts of your brain for sure. That
It's
connecting things.
It's pretty interesting, and we always would roll
for sure. No, I get it.
So we're listening to reggae music.
Probably avoids the pain.
Oh well, it helps, especially with the CBDs now.
Yes.
So I'm caught in that choke, and I remember I got him, and then we're listening to reggae music, and I just remember thinking I'm on the beach listening to reggae music and someone's rocking me trying to wake me up, like waking me up from like a beautiful freaking sleep on the beach.
You just went
is
somewhere.
What it felt like. I went somewhere, bro. I went like a whole another place. So
I love it. That's awesome, man.
So for me, it felt like I was on the beach getting woke up by and just gently being rocked, right?
Yeah.
And listening to reggae, and then I wake up and my coach, the dude that I was rolling with, and everybody's like, "Hey, what's up, buddy?" that was the first time you've been choked unconscious, huh? They're like, congratulations. They're all, now go sit over there.
And learn what you did wrong.
So I'm sitting over there, and all I remember, like, it literally felt like I woke up from a very restful sleep. That's as weird as that is, right?
I wonder, now that you said that, it's kind of sparks my creative cylinders to think like, okay, what if you could then induce that? I wonder if we can study that and induce and see if it actually puts you in some sort of state where you can have like
I don't know.
quick fix.
You have like
for a sleep and you know,
like a
sleep
30-second REM.
Yeah.
You're just like,
what if that is? I don't know.
But it was crazy because I woke up and I felt perfectly fine. Now, later that day, though, I did have like a back of the head fuzzy. That was about it. But it wasn't anything that was crazy or severe. And then
it went away in like a day or so?
Yeah. Well, not even, it went away. It was done. Like there was no issue. But the funny thing is,
people die in sparring like this? No.
I've never heard of a death in jiu-jitsu from someone holding a choke too long. There's even guys like that are complete pricks like Babalu Sapral that choked people out unconscious and did it intentionally, and the person's still fine. You would have to hold it for quite a while.
To the point where you're just like trying to kill somebody.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it because what makes you go unconscious is just the fact that you cut off the air supply to the brain, right? So you would have to continually hold it a long period of time for that person to go brain dead and then die. So for someone, and that's what makes the movies kind of stupid. Like you'll watch like Bourne Supremacy or something, and Jason Bourne gets a guy like in a rear naked choke, and then like he just holds it, and then next you know the guy's dead. No, he would just be asleep.
I'm curious if we can Google that. Just out of curiosity. Let's see if it's let's like put the example of, does it support our claim? Have people died sparring?
Now in Muay Thai, I'd probably tell you 100% because that's
I don't know how to spell J-I is J-I-U.
Yeah. See that? J-I-U and then and then J-I-T-S-U.
There it is. Hard. People died sparring. Oh, Reddit 2016. All right, let's see what this dude says.
People dropping dead. What?
People drop dead all the time doing activities that are much less strenuous. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
A heart attack, I could see that. A heart attack, you can't control that.
Yeah.
I could see that.
I wonder if that's okay. Very intense form of cardio, stopping suddenly.
Where people die a lot is actually cutting weight for fights.
Diuretics.
Just cutting, just doing too
same
much.
Same thing in bodybuilding is the same thing as trying to like make weight. Yeah. Anyway, we're not going to really try to spend too much time on that.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that gets people.
That's my teacher. Anyway.
But that's one that I know gets people. But the fearlessness that you have after being choked unconscious, you're kind of like...
because it's like you've already faced the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah, I'm kind of like...
besides dying.
Yeah, I'm like, Well, and then that was a whole other thing. It's like, if I was to die from that, I wouldn't have even known. So it's kind of like... And the type of... I've been in a couple of car accidents that were pretty terrible. And same thing. If I was going to die from it, I wouldn't have even known. It just would have happened. Quick. So why... I don't like want to live my life in fear of doing things where people are like, well, that's kind of...
Hell yeah,
they're like,
baby.
well, that's crazy. Why would you do that? You could die. I'm like, well, you could die
anything.
Just walking down the street and a bus freaking hits you. I'm like, you could die falling off a curb. So why do that?
Better band than myself.
Yeah. The fearlessness is one. I would have to say the friendships that I made
are a different level of friendship because you're getting way more intimate with people.
It's lifelong. Like shout out to my boy Kamikaze. His name's Ryan McDebane.
Sounds like a badass dude.
Yeah, he's a beast. And my boy Corey Paredes, he's a beast. Maybe we should do a companion show where we have fighters. I have two more. We can do 3 mics. So oh yeah, they would love it. They would love it. And
are they local?
Absolutely.
Oh hell
yeah. Corey Paredes is local. He's a champion now. He's huge. He fights out of 9-9 Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay, you need to convince him to come, and we'll do a companion show. We'll have all 4 people.
I mean, he's huge. Like his coach is Eduardo Talas, which is the beginner of the. He started something known as the Turtle Guard. It's freaking ridiculous.
Turtle Guard, eh?
So they call him Professor. Well, they're Profe, so it's Professor Eduardo Talas. And now he's a black belt. So and he's been competing. He just recently won Worlds and Pan American Games. He's a beast.
What's his name?
My friend Corey. It's Corey with a K.
Corey.
And it's just no E. No, it's a Kory. And then Paredes. So that's kind of like a P-A-R-D. Yeah, actually, I think I just saw it.
This guy?
Yep. That's my boy.
Boy, Mr. Corey.
He's a beast, dude. That's out of 99 Jiu-Jitsu.
Hey, Corey, shout out to you, man. We're just looking you up on Google.
Local San Diego. Local
San
Diego,
Diegan, baby. We should get him on the show for sure.
Oh, that's really doable. That's super doable.
I would love to as part of one of the segments in the show, I would love to have where we can go through some like moves and then like teach me a little bit more.
What, break them down?
Yeah, break them down. I would love to learn.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So the thing is, it's like, so the friendships that you have with those guys in I think the movie Fight Club.
Fight Club.
Yeah, they're like, you never know someone really until you fight them, right?
Oh, yes.
And
that's actually true even at like a intellectual level is when you have an argument with somebody.
Yeah, have a debate. And
absolutely, because then you're like, hey, we disagree on something. So let's figure out why and let's actually assess it.
You get a huge mental, like you get a big level of respect. Yes. So same thing with like the jiu-jitsu community, the friends that you make that are going to be lifelong, you know what I mean? So that's it's kind of cool. Like even like my boy Kamikaze, it's my boy Dave.
It's fascinating, man.
One of my day ones and will be. It's just like I said, you spent so much blood, sweat, and time on the mats with people that they just become good friends of yours. And it's like, it's an unbreakable bond because it's not something that you can like say you share with your coworkers, because your coworkers probably just think you're crazy. So, well, oh, you do jujitsu? You're crazy. I've seen that stuff. You know, like
it's the unknown, right?
It's like you always fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But those are two of the biggest factors. I can think of.
So just moving the conversation towards the political side of you potentially wanting to run for office and help. Like what do you see? For you as sort of like, what is it your path forward? What do you think is needed or necessary for, like, we've talked about a bunch of things to define, so to speak, the current state of affairs and how things are politically and intellectually in people's individual minds and collective minds.
Sure.
What do you think would be a good way forward or a path to consider?
So for myself and kind of what has driven me, because I can't say that I ever wanted to really do politics. Like if you were to ask me when I was, maybe in high school or early 20s, I would say that that's not something that I'm too interested in. But I think something changed. I think probably around 2004, 2005, the first time I heard Obama speak at the Democratic National Convention, I just took notice of him, and he's one of those people that I absolutely love, follow, and admire.
I love Obama.
Yeah, and did he make mistakes in his presidency? Absolutely, everyone does. The Fast and Furious thing is always brought up, and that will always be a stain on his presidency. But ultimately,
sorry, what is that?
The Fast and Furious.
What is that?
It was something that happened during the Obama administration where guns, a lot of guns were sold to guerrillas in different parts of Mexico, and drug cartels and things of that nature.
From the U.S.?
Yep. And they found their way into cartel hands, which found their way all the way back up to Chicago. And it was something that was happened during the Obama administration. It was called Fast and Furious. But
no, that just shows you how ignorant I am.
But it's, so like I always say, it's a stain. But, all presidents have that. But for me, it was kind of looking at and seeing how, just a spark can ignite the largest change. And I always said, even if I'm not the person that will institute the change, I would at least want to be the person that might create the spark.
Yeah.
And maybe create the person that finds that forethought. I'm not that. I don't necessarily have to be that person, but I would like to invoke that thought.
You want to inspire people to. I get what you're saying. I think what you're saying is that instead of
to do to be really
the best version of yourself.
Exactly, be the best version of yourself. If you have something that you think that you can bring to the world that enriches it, do it. If you are capable of whining about something or recognizing an issue, will then be part of the solution. It's very easy for everyone to identify a problem, but no one's willing to fix the problem, right?
Sure.
So I kind of had this thing where that's where my mind went really on that subject was and not to sound like an asshole or anything, but I was like, I kind of feel like I have some things that, and you kind of test theories on people.
Okay.
And I think that's, excuse me. I think that's kind of how Mimi and I got into the conversation.
Oh, really?
Because I was always told if you want to do something, then be vocal about it. Tell people about it.
And I think it's a very good skill to be able to talk effectively about what it is you're trying to do.
Right. Well, and also it's an accountability thing.
Yeah.
If I run into her sometime in the future, she'll probably say, "Hey, how's your political career going?" That's that's a built-in accountability thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So
It's actually just, if I can, for a second, on the psychological front of that, from what I understand is that you will put things out. So like, let's say a lot of people say that they're doing 10 different things and they'll like blast it out on social media, get people's likes and affirmations. But doing that act got you that hit of chemicals that you got for satisfaction. And then you don't actually even go further in execution.
exactly.
You just let go of that and then you're done. You don't even go further than, so it's like, it's one of those, like, it can go either way. So I totally get what you're saying.
Exactly. Well, and then also, to look at that on the spiritual aspect of it, you manifest it.
Yeah.
Right. So if I say it and I keep putting this out, you can create it, you can manifest it.
Sure.
Opportunities will fall in your lap because of the conversation that I had with
I
Mimi.
totally get it.
We're
man.
now here. Right.
I used to tell people when I was a 113-pound kid, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. And I've had people laugh at me. I've had people tell me, you'll never win. I've had people tell me, good luck, buddy. Oh, man. I was just like, oh, you guys, this is great. And the funniest thing was most of those people, when I, saw them years after, they looked exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I looked completely different.
Right.
And I was like, well, shit, I must be doing something right.
Exactly. Right.
So that's all I got to say for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's it was a lot of that, and just putting kind of that out and wanting to influence and inspire. And like I said, I kind of feel like I had decent ideas, so I'll kind of test them out on people the same way that I'll tell people about my future aspirations. And not only have I been seeing people will maybe agree with me, they'll even take it a step further and say, "Man, that's really, really insightful. Why don't you look into doing this, or why don't you look into doing that?"
Yeah.
And at some point, it kind of became like, well, okay, well, why couldn't I? And just kind of looking at the current political climate, and as I get older, I'm like, that's actually feasible, and it's something that I'm absolutely gonna do. I'm absolutely at some point gonna run and drop my name in the hat.
Hell yeah.
And but it's having the plan, the foundation, and a couple of things that you want to run on that will separate you. And right now, I just feel like with politics, we're doing too much of the same thing, which doesn't affect change. So I know.
How much of that do you think is systematized, though, that we have to change the system itself?
There are certain parts of the system that need to be looked at. And I would say, and you'll get this because you're a software guy, and I know you hate Microsoft, and I'm going to use Microsoft for the example.
No, all good.
But so when Microsoft created Windows, right, they didn't just say, okay, that's the biggest and best and most brilliant minds came up with this and we're done. No, they saw a need for something else, and then they did another version. Then they do another version. Then they do another version.
Development. And
they just keep developing it, right? Essentially, this document that we have that's called the Constitution is Windows 1. And we add amendments, and we've done ratifications to it, but it is a slow-moving ship in order to enact change in government. So is it fundamental issues that need to be looked at and changed? Absolutely. It's the system that's pretty difficult because of just how much of a slow-moving mechanism it is. And what I was getting at with it, the things that we do aren't actually trying to invoke change is the fact that every single election cycle, you hear the same issues, right? Border protection, gay marriage, abortions. I mean, these are things that were brought up 40, 50, 60 years ago that every single election cycle are still brought up. Why?
Because we haven't figured it out yet.
I think more divisive. I think and some of these we have figured out. Like, why are we still talking about abortion when we already have Roe versus Wade?
Why are we keep visiting the same
Why do we
shit?
keep revisiting these
Yeah.
things? And what happens is as the people that live in this country, if you can have people then say, and I'm just using abortion as an example. So if this was passed in the 60s and now, abortion clinics and things are popping up, within the change of an administration, now people have to get and become accustomed to them shutting down and not having those
Yeah,
same
I see what you're saying. Because when the party switches hands, why are we like all of a sudden then
Exactly.
saying, nope, that's the wrong thing when we've already once
Exactly.
decided it's the right thing?
Exactly. So why go back and revisit these things? We never actually have changed. We actually just keep doing this one step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step
Because
back,
it
2 steps
provokes
forward.
people's inner conflict with the issue.
Creates fear and it creates division. We in election cycles are very good at saying you are with them and you are with them. Now go vote.
Identity.
Yep.
Fuck.
And it all boils back down to that the fact that nothing gets done because no one will ever really bring up change because of some of the same things are still being used as tools of division. And then whenever something's brought up that could be beneficial, that party's not going to budge because it doesn't go with their agenda. So that's where in my mind, I thought looking at other countries and their esoteric models of how they do things, a viable third party may not be a bad option. But as it stands right now, there's the fear of that pulling from those fringe votes, the people that are just kind of lumping in by the identity.
So you're saying for you to have a successful third party, you'd have to have a way to appeal to the folks that are not necessarily on the full like consumed end of either party.
Correct.
That exists right now, so they don't identify with fully Democrat or fully Republican. And they're somewhere potentially in the middle or somewhere. And that's a weird kind of a question because it's like everybody is somewhere in the middle, wouldn't you say?
You have you really don't though.
Oh yeah.
Because you have your centrists, and those are people that are literally like don't identify with really either one of the party, but they'll vote Democrat or vote Republican based off of the politics or who the candidate is, right? I was that way.
But it almost seems like, doesn't it make sense to be like some sort of an objective middle anyway? And then, I mean, ideally speaking, to then like pick from the middle. I should say, you're sitting in an objective place and you're looking at the facts as they present themselves.
Yes.
Here's the candidates for X party. Here's a candidate for Y and Z parties.
Yes.
And I'm going to look at what they each all have to offer. And then based on that, I'm going to make an educated decision that fundamentally speaks to the present issues, not just the
party that it presents to.
Yeah.
It could be effective, but this is the thing. We have fringe, just people that are way too far on right or left, which is fine. You have your centrists and then you have your moderates. The biggest group of people that you would need to influence would be those moderates. So
can you define what that entails? Or the moderate?
So a moderate would be if you're looking at the Republican Party, a moderate would be John Kasich. He's the governor of Ohio.
Okay.
He is a Republican, but when you hear him speak, he sounds more like a Democrat. All that means is that his views are a little bit more social conscious. He's fiscally conservative, but he's very socially liberal, if that makes sense. So it kind of bridges that too and but he is a Republican, but it does not make him so far left or so far right to the, if you get what I mean.
No, I totally get it.
So it's literally just being somewhat of just that moderate voice. And honestly, if you look at it, majority of presidents, I would say up until Trump, have been somewhat moderates or sometimes even centrist.
Yeah.
Obama was blamed for being a centrist. George W. was somewhat of a moderate. Clinton is hard to define. because he lowered the deficit, literally killed the deficit to where we were at a surplus, but at the same time created one of the most ridiculous unsocially just programs with the 96 Act, which was the 3 strikes you're out, and then the mandatory minimums with so that's getting on the topic of prison reform, but like the mandatory minimums, he created that, and that was a Democratic president that put more people in jail than anyone ever did. So it's like a lot of people don't look at that or think about that, but he actually did apologize for it, which is
get more water, man.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. He later, like I think this actually a year or two ago, he came back and apologize for the mass incarceration created.
Right. Yeah, I think part of it is also like how much do people actually know what, like the thing is like when we're taught history in school, you know, how much of it are we taught to just look at objectively versus how much of it are we taught to teach a narrative?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And then who is defining that narrative that's being taught?
Yeah.
And what is the objective of that narrative?
It's kind of scary if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like what are your intentions in what you're teaching in your curriculum?
Fair enough.
And I think that also has to do very much with, I think, the teachers that are also teaching it as well, right? If there's like a mandatory program for the state to say this kid is now adequate in American history or European history or whatever the subject may be, if the teacher's just teaching it by the book, right, then you have to say there's a lot that's missed. But if you were to say what narrative is it written, that's hard to say. I'd be really interested. That's a really interesting question. That's a really good question.
Yeah, because I would be curious to know, like, what is it that you're trying to project?
Exactly, right?
Part of that narrative that you're teaching everyone.
Yeah.
And then this is where, like, to me personally speaking, like when I have kids, I'm of the firm belief that I think education is definitely going to need a massive reform. I mean, to me, that's the most fundamental thing why I feel like I failed in certain things in college is because I was not taught how to actually learn.
Weren't equipped for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've recently, even in my life, in the last year or so, I've read more books in the last year of my life than I read probably in all of school.
Dude,
like
I can
because like
agree.
I actually genuinely got the passion for learning and actually like curiosity for sparking, like, oh my gosh, this actually is curious. Like I do genuinely want to know the answers behind this and at least how far we've gotten
Right?
and go to the frontier and see if I can help shift it further. And that's what led me to like kind of like my, you know, why I'm doing this podcast and all that. But anyway, to your point, exactly that. Like I don't know. I really don't know what is the narrative we're trying to teach. And if we are trying to teach a narrative, then shouldn't we have a say in what that narrative is?
Yeah.
And shouldn't all of us have a say in what that narrative is?
Right. And you're 100% right when you look at when you're looking at education reform. So to kind of get to preview of platform, with the education model, I wonder why America left the apprenticeship model and trade school model. So, and the reason I say this, especially when you're talking
Money, baby.
when you're talking to
Guarantee
someone,
it's money.
Well, it's money because we wanted people at state schools and private schools,
Yeah.
right? So it became you go to college and you're good. But what about that plumber or that electrician I know that's making $130,000 a year? Easy. I'm talking easy making $130,000 a year. And they just went to trade school. They didn't put themselves in massive debt. It's so
Fair enough.
So why is it that we left the learned trade? Not everyone should go to college or have a desire to go to college.
Yeah.
Some people could really benefit if we looked at that. Also, looking at the business model of college, they did a lot of studying and looking at apprenticeships and apprenticeships on pretty technical things, and the retention aspect of what people learn when they're actually doing the job that they're going to be performing was really, really high.
Makes sense because you have something to correlate it to.
Yeah.
A lot of university is exploratory work, potentially speaking, and it's not necessarily like, for example, what I mean by that is like you pick a major and you're like, oh, I think I'm going to do computer science. So, okay, let's put you in some bunch of physics classes. And let's put you in so you understand how that works because you're going to be an engineer fundamentally. So you need to understand how to solve problems. And let's put you in a bunch of mathematics classes too because you're going to need to learn that as well. So then they take you all that and you're like, well, how does this actually relate to the job that I'm trying to build if I'm trying to build websites?
Yeah.
What the fuck do I need to know physics for? You know what I'm saying? Like it's so I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. So it would be looking at and then God, you have this big battle between privately funded schools now, which are your charter schools, right? And looking at the charter model and whether or not if it's providing a better education than it is for private for
yeah. I wonder
school.
what the data says.
The data says it's not, which is pretty interesting. And the horrible part.
Well, I think the reality is that the charters or the private schools you're talking about are essentially supposed to be a place for people to network at a richer level, so to speak, because you would accept people of a higher what am I trying to say?
But like
People-
social.
a higher social economic status,
Yeah.
so to speak, but also you know, I don't know how much of that is related to then the people that you're admitting, then, you know, who gets in, and is it purely based on that? Then there's also like the scholarship piece.
Yeah.
I don't know the actual specifics, but that's what I think it's supposed to be.
There's a bunch of deciding factors on it. There's a limited amount of scholarships. There's a limited amount of low income people that are allowed into it. And then majority of it is the who's and who can afford it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
whose dad's been here before,
exactly.
and dad's dad, and all that legacy stuff.
But it's also government supplemented, right? But where's that money coming from? It's coming from those public schools. So the public schools further suffer, and then that's why you're seeing all.
What do you mean by that? Money.
So the money that funds some of these private and charters,
it was coming from.
They're still getting government. They're still getting government money and tax breaks.
You're shitting me.
Nope.
So they're not fully private.
They're not fully private. They are government funded.
And then also, where do they get their curriculum from?
They develop their curriculum.
So they develop their own curriculum.
So it's not really much oversight, right?
Fuck, weird.
It is kind of a weird thing. Like there was one that Vice did a story on. It was like Aviation Academy or something.
Yeah.
And it was literally, they were like training these kids to be pilots. It's kind of cool. But when you looked at the base of the kids that were in there, oh God, it was just like this kid's, you know, his dad is a CEO or VP of like Canadian Air. And then like, it was just like the who's of things. And the curriculums that they were saying that they're looking at aren't necessarily even better or higher level of education. But I also think that that's contributing to why you're seeing the teachers striking and because they're having to put so much more of their money into just having basic school supplies.
Sure.
Because they're losing funding because it's going elsewhere. And then you look at the standardization. So all of us were victims of standardized testing, right?
Sure.
But kids aren't standard, right? Humans aren't standard. No one's a standard. So when looking at better aptitude testing to figure out kids' aptitude than just A, B, C, or D standardized test, right?
Yeah.
So
I think what they're doing is they're fundamentally trying to categorize people into buckets, but they're not doing a good enough job of. They're putting everybody in the same funnel, but like they don't have the same. You can't have the same exit path too. Like, so example, if you take a standardized test and you find out that you're not really good at it, like for example, I was terrible at the SATs. I don't think I did ever like more than like 1400. That was probably the best I did. I think it's out of 2600 though, so it's like shit.
Well, that's now.
But anyway, point being, let's say like I know for sure I'm more creative because I was a drummer. I was a musician in high school and in middle school, and I've always been a drummer since I was a little kid and playing music. So like I've always been drawn to creative and arts. That's been my thing since the beginning. So like, okay, if that's true, then why is it that the work that we do in school, shouldn't it bifurcate your path? Like, let's say so I guess what I'm saying is like a psychological profile, for example, rather than like, or like a full assessment test. Like you take a test and you see, okay, this is what you're good at and here's what you're not good at.
Sure.
So then it will only give you stuff and funnel you out to like do stuff that you're good at.
Yeah.
And channel your curriculum potentially to be exploiting your strengths and helping you discover how to be better at what you're already naturally gifted with.
Yes. So there are testing for that, and I actually took
I don't know
one.
how much of that's deployed in schools though.
I can't tell you exactly why or when. I want to say it was probably middle school, but I took this long standard.
Mimi's here, by the way.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, she just crept into the house. Hey, baby. We're still live. Yeah. This is live. Anyway.
So I can't remember exactly what age I was, but there was this long standardization test that we took, and I still have it actually, but it broke down like your aptitudes in terms of everything. It was art, math, everything. I'll have to find it to you and
please send it
and
to
show you. But it was pretty interesting, and it gave you like a real good view of it. But the thing of that is, we have those type of tests that can actually tell you. It was like some type of career occupational educational program thing.
Okay.
We have those type of testing. The problem is the follow through. So what I mean by that is,
there's no curriculum.
I now have that information. Now help me.
How do you act on it?
Steer to that because based off of that testing, you're telling me I should be working at NASA, which I was like the 97th percentile in like science and all this other crap. So I'm like, based off of this information, this is what you're saying I should be doing. That's sweet. How do I get there?
That's where you would hope a counselor would come in and help you, but that's not always the case
that's
now.
not always the case. But even if the counselor could help me, where
I had counselors, just for the record, fuck me over more than have helped me.
yeah.
Yeah.
But where would my curriculum have gone from there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't know.
So that's where
It's a complicated problem.
that's kind of where I think with the education thing, and I think you're right when you're thinking of who's going to be what are they going to be pushing.
Honestly, I feel like there should
kids.
be there could be like the potential one solution that comes to my mind, and I'm just voicing it now. It's like you could have some sort of a test where you have multiple people like come about and they take these tests, and then they have like a understanding of what their curriculum could be, but then the parents can guide and dictate. They can dictate what it is that the person is doing, and they can say, okay, here's what I want my kid to learn because I know that this is their strengths, and I can generate like content paths, like tracks for what it is that I think that would help my child do better in society.
Well, because who's going to know some of that information better than the
Your
parents?
parent.
Yeah.
Hopefully you would think if
Yeah.
they were raised in a home where, everything is kind of standardized in certain ways. It's loosely speaking, but yeah.
Sure. Because I mean, I know there was things that my mom she was like, well, at a young age, I knew there was a couple of things that you were really, really good at. And she was like, there's a couple of things that you're just god awful at.
Yeah.
And she was like, but she could kind of see my interest, and they all pushed me
same
towards
thing
it.
with my mom. Same thing. Your mother knows you best.
And pushed you towards it, right? So I get that with that. And that's the thing with, as you look, closer at what's going on with it, I think we almost lost music as a whole, and you as a musician.
Music, yeah.
I mean, we almost lost music in school. I played saxophone
Nice.
from 8th grade.
Jazzy.
Yeah, through actually I started in 5th grade, and then actually stopped playing in 9th grade because I couldn't play in high school and play football.
Sure.
Because they wanted me to go the marching band route.
Oh, okay.
So marching PE conflicted with my with football.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
So
we had a few people in marching band that couldn't do band because they wanted to play football more.
Yeah. So
totally get it.
So I end up leaving. I did do concert that
band.
year.
Yeah, sure.
And that was a lot of fun. But it was like I couldn't imagine my middle school years without me playing saxophone.
I totally get it. That was my underlying thing. Like music was my way of feeling like I was still existing in the world and not feeling like, because I never felt that I was very smart. And I always knew that kids were getting better grades than myself. And it's not that I didn't try. Just really my attention was difficult for me to focus.
It's probably somewhere else.
It was definitely somewhere else. And I didn't know necessarily what to channel into. And music was something that naturally, of course, with mom's, influence and earlier on sending me to like learn music and whatnot, it definitely became my second home. Like that was where I lived. And then bodybuilding became actually another into that. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about music is it was always something, it's like, you can do it on your own. One, it's not something that no one can take from you. And honestly, musicians, they are smart. It's another language.
It is. I feel like there's it's a frequency game, right? Like where the whole world is resonating on different frequencies. If you, and that's scientifically true. You can look that up, but it's like music is a language that, like in an orchestra, for example, let's take that. Like you have somebody that's conducting, keeping time, and you're having people bring order in, you're adding layers and layers of rhythmic patterns, and they have a melody, and it's just beautiful synchronicity happening right there, and nobody's talking.
Yeah, how everyone's just playing their part.
Yes, everybody's playing exactly. It's like, it's almost like the reason we have such a fascination with music, psychologically speaking, it's because it resembles something so beautiful that we don't fully understand. But actually, if you look at it closely, it's just layers and layers, and you can actually just, you can take out the bass line or the whatever, and you can really see that there's a beauty to it when it's all there, kind of.
So there was, before Kanye became the Kanye West that we know of.
Yeah. I like we're talking about Kanye.
when he actually was a musical genius.
You're talking like Dark Twisted Fantasy. You're talking High School College Dropout. That album.
Yeah, we're talking College Dropout. Late Registration.
Late Registration.
Right around that time period. He had a painting where he showed how music looked in his head.
Oh, and we should look this up.
And I understood it so well because.
Do you remember like what it was, or
I don't? Kanye? You would have to like look up. You would have to like type something weird like Kanye's music in his head painting. If that even.
It might be possible. Let's go to images right quick and see if we can see. No. Nah, it'd be tough to find that one.
That one might be, or look up maybe Kanye's painting, because it actually was a painting.
Oh,
he
okay.
did.
Kanye West music painting. Trying to do too many things at once. Oh, is this?
Oh,
No, that's
a
definitely
weird
not it.
Video, yeah. No, it did look similar.
Something
No,
like
no,
that?
no. Keep going. Because it literally looked like. Have you ever seen like or used like recording equipment for music, like SoundForge or
Sure.
And
Is this?
you
Is
can,
this?
and you
This
can
was
kinda,
somebody else's artwork.
that was someone else's, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can like see how like music looks rhythmically on the computer.
Right.
He kind of painted something that looks similar to that, and it was like how he sees music in his head.
I actually didn't even know Kanye could paint, man.
Yeah,
That's
me either.
crazy.
And it was similar. Similar for me is like when you close your eyes and you listen to music, you can actually break it down and see it that way. And it was pretty. Yeah,
I felt it like the moment I can shut off my mind. Like let's say I'm in the middle of drumming, and the moment I can shut off like my thinking mind, I can sometimes drum or diddle like certain patterns that I'm like, I don't even know where that came from. I don't even know if I can do it again. But the moment I start thinking about it, I'll mess up.
Yep.
That's the thing.
Yep.
It's like you have to kind of like you're all inspired by your own abilities sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're like, the moment I try to replicate that or think about doing it, it will never happen again.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, man.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
No, I completely know what you mean by that.
Yeah.
It was fun though. I think in 8th or 9th grade, a friend of mine, we did a little jazz quintet. So he played tenor sax. I played alto. We had a trumpet player, and we had a drummer, and we took Miles Davis's Frankie Freeloader,
Nice, man.
and we transposed it into for saxophone, and it was fun.
That's
It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, hey, listen, let me go back to the real quick because I got to wrap this up in a little bit because we got to leave. But
Okay.
I definitely want you to come back. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to finish up on. So, tell me a little bit about how you plan to bring about certain change, or at least educate people to then want to join this third party that you think that could help.
See, this is the thing.
And take this wherever you want it to go.
Yeah. Well, first it has to start with people's recognition that there may need to be, because the way that it's currently.
Say that again.
I said the first thing to create a viable third party option is that people need to start realizing that there may need to be one.
Okay, that there needs to be a party. So the first is a recognition that there needs to be another.
Yeah, because the thought of it right now is toxic. But at the same time, if you look at the current state of Democrats and Republicans, it's toxic. So the only way really to get something done is to have maybe, and I almost look at it as like the big brother in the room. It's almost needing to have like.
Somebody used to call it the elephant in the room, I should say, right?
Exactly.
Like you have to talk about the actual thing that's wrong.
And if you think about it, it's kind of like, and God, I can't stand them. The Tea Party came in, and they were trying to be their own viable party, right? But then what happened? The Tea Party just infiltrated the Republican Party, and that's why it's now so fringe. So it's been thought of, and then it just gets absorbed. So
Gotcha.
Bernie, independent, right? But he's going to run under the Democratic ticket. Why? Because you need a major party to support you.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about that. I thought he was trying to do an independent party at one point.
He was at one point, but it's very, very hard when you start dealing with super delegates and super PACs.
I see. So you're saying this is partly like because of the way the system is, you almost have to like navigate around the limitations.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're going to make it to the ballot.
Exactly. You have to create such a big. You have to, in all honesty, you have to have so many people that are now willing to acknowledge it and make that change, to move towards more of a, and I say it has to be more of a centrist type movement, because it's just far too fringe.
Yeah.
The only way that'll happen is if people actually believe that is a good solution. And I think it is a good solution, because what's happening, even when we do get ties in like the Senate, or what will happen is you'll still have a very Republican vice president come, and then he's the 51st vote, and then it becomes law. So a viable third party option, I just think it gives people way more, and by people I mean the constituents, the people, us, gives us way more levity, way more power in where we actually want to see change and institute change. because right now all people are doing are just trying to stay in power, and that's not government.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. So I guess part of your mission at this point is to figure out how to get people to recognize that there is a change that's necessary, which I think a lot of people are sort of doing that. There's plenty of people that think that these things are not going the way they should.
Yeah, there are, and this is the thing. On the congressional level, it's I can't say very easy, but there are plenty of successful independents.
Yeah.
On the Senate level, there's only a few successful independents. There's never been a successful presidential candidate, and that's not necessarily where I necessarily want to go with my career. Like I said,
you mean there's never been a president that's fully successful?
That's an independent. That wasn't a part of the major party, unless if you probably go way back, and we're talking like way back in history when it was like the Whigs and the Tories before it was we're talking way back. But so I wouldn't know that fact, but in modern history there's it's always been a major candidate. So in order for it to be on that level, it would have to be a lot more change. But to do it on the local and smaller level, it can very much happen. People just need to, when they see a candidate that they like and they identify with, that are saying the things that make sense, that are solution based for them and will help enrich their life, they have to be afraid to go against whatever party lines or party political allegiance that they feel they have with the two major parties, and vote their mind and vote their heart.
I love it. So how would you say, let's say, look, from this podcast, if I want somebody to get in touch with you, maybe they want to have further questions, what would you say is like a good way to get in touch with you? What do you think?
My Facebook, you can find me
I'll
there.
link your Facebook in the podcast for sure.
Yep. My Facebook is easy. I'm on Instagram as well.
Sweet.
So I'll shoot you my Instagram.
Yeah, hit me up, man, and or you can just say it out loud right now if you know the handles.
I can't think of the handle offline.
Okay, all good.
I'll definitely,
but listen, my recommendation to you, man, would be maximize the power of social media right now. And since you are trying to inflict good change, I think if you put out, there's no limitation to how much positive and good content and probably thought-provoking content that we can put out.
Sure.
In the machine of the content world that we're living in now. So I would say, let me know how I can help, and I have some ideas we can talk offline. But I think it'd be very beneficial for what you're doing to find a way to have a sort of a place or a community online virtually that exists where people can find more and learn more, and have like a sort of a home to call, like, okay, if they are considering these things. And
sure.
I don't know, we could do more of these. We could do fireside chats. We could do discussions with people and record them and put up online. I'm happy to help you with any of that, man.
I appreciate
we have the
that,
equipment.
man.
So
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, like there's nothing more I want to do than to help other people get where they're trying to go. Because
that's
huge. And I think part of what this podcast, and it's like it's still in its early works, but I'm I know where I can take it and what power that I have.
Absolutely.
And
I think just linking you up with some of the SD heavy hitters that I know too would be. I
need influences right now. I need people that genuinely are at the top of their game, but they're willing to talk about it and they're willing to help other people get there. So I that's what I want to do with this studio and what this podcast of mine and other people's.
Yeah.
Dude, maybe we can even produce your own podcast. No joke. You can use the studio and come here and record your own podcast. I can have all of this retrofitted to work for your own like labels and everything. So not even an issue.
Huge, bro.
Yeah, man.
We'll definitely chat.
We'll have to do this again. I had a
will.
really, really good time talking to you. This was a really fun conversation. Like, holy shit, I think like 2.5 hours went by and I don't even know how. So that's
crazy.
That was fantastic. I had a great old time, guys.
Absolutely, man.
That was awesome. All right, let's cut this thing out.